You do realize that Vic knew Zenyatta pretty much as well as John Sheriffs and Mike Smith.
Boy, I sure did. I owe such a debt of gratitude to her. People say, "Oh man, those calls you made of Zenyatta, they were so good, and you're great." And I'm like, "Dude, it isn't me, it's her." As you can make the same call at the Woodlands in Kansas City, and no one's going to say that it was a great call because you're not calling a great horse. I called 8 of her 19 wins, and every day that I think about her, and she basically, her and Lava Man really helped me to be an announcer, to get some sort of notoriety as a race caller because of what they did, and I was just lucky enough to be able to report it. It's like Al Michaels when he called the Miracle on Ice. The American team had to beat the Soviet hockey team for everybody to say what a great call that Al Michaels made. Well, if they had lost 6-0, they wouldn't be waxing poetic about Michaels' call. So, yeah, Zenyatta is, she's so very special, and I know her pretty well. I saw her a couple of times, and she knows me. She knows, not as well as she knows Mike, but she knows me. I would always bring her beer.
Guinness.
Guinness.
She's a Guinness drinker.
She'd only drink Guinness. Well, she'd drink anything, but she was kind of a snob for Guinness. One of the things in that earthquake call that you don't hear is the gallop out. It was a very, very close race, and as they were pulling up, I said, "I don't know nor care who won." That was quite an experience. I thought we were finished.
Explain the announcer's booth situation at Hollywood Park.
Well, first of all, Hollywood Park at that time was a 77-year-old structure, and the announcer's booth is a freestanding building on the top, on the roof at Hollywood Park, and it's basically the 8th floor, but the entire racetrack is underneath you. And in retrospect, I think because it had survived so many earthquakes, and any structure that lasts 77 years in Southern California knows how to deal with earthquakes. And that was a 4.9 Richter scale earthquake, but believe me, it felt like 8 to us on the roof. And to be very honest with you, I really honestly thought that was curtains. We were finished. And one of the parts of the call, when they go into the far turn, is I say, "I just want you to know I love you all, and horse racing was my first love." That was actually edited in my mind as the race was going on, because that race happened in June. In April of that year, 2 nights before we opened the race meet, I lost my father. And when I thought that was it, and I was going down with the ship, the very first thing that popped into my mind was Dad. So as they were going into the far turn, I think I'm about to come and join him and see him in the kingdom. And so I thought about saying something to my father, which would have been really a very poignant, wonderful race call had I died. But if I didn't die, it was going to sound really cheesy. So I figured, okay, play it safe and hope that you don't die. And so I switched it. Instead of saying, "Dad, I love you and I miss you," I said, I want you fans to know that horse racing was my first love and I love you all. So that kind of got edited on the fly while the earthquake was going on.
That was just the roof in general at Hollywood Park was a scary situation.
Yeah, that's the thing, and you know it very well, Nance. One of the things about the announcer's booth or the steward's stand in Hollywood Park is no one can sneak up on you. I can tell you that, because there's this catwalk that goes all the way across the roof, and it's like this sheet metal catwalk with a little rails on the side, and if somebody is coming from the elevator to the front of the roof, or where the buildings are, where the stewards or the placing judges or the photo finish or myself in my announcer's booth, it's like the whole place shakes anyway. I mean, and so it was, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, it was like this. It was literally swaying back and forth, and then it started to shake and rumble, and then it really swayed. And thank God for whoever built Hollywood Park. It was rebuilt after a big fire, I want to say in 1951 or 2. So it wasn't actually a 77-year-old structure at that point, but they did a great job with it. And, you know, last night when you were when you were emceeing the charity banquet, and you did a fabulous job with that. You got a little teared up when you were thinking about Jack Van Berg. And places shouldn't tear you up as much as people. The people is obviously what matters most. But when I think about Hollywood Park, I mean, that's all I ever wanted to do, was be the announcer at Hollywood Park. And I knew I was set for life.
Yeah.
I knew they'd just drag me out of there. I wanted to be like Joe Hernandez, who, by the way, died making a race call. Joe Hernandez was an announcer at Santa Anita. He got kicked in the stomach by a horse one morning. He didn't know how bad he was bleeding internally, and he was calling the first race at Santa Anita and collapsed and died, but had the wherewithal to think while he was dying and laying on the floor to reach up and turn off the microphone.
Wow.
And then we lost him. So when I think of Hollywood Park, I get choked up because, I mean, that was, when you're a kid, if you want to play baseball, you want to be the center fielder for the New York Yankees or the Dodgers or the Cardinals. And I just wanted to be the announcer at Hollywood Park, and I got to be it for 13 years, so I'm very blessed to have that, but it's still very bittersweet, and I'm still pissed off about the fact that it got closed.
I
Nancy and I worked
share
together
that
at Hollywood
sentiment.
Park for 10 years.
Yeah.
Nancy was the stall man. That's a very important job.
It's a very thankless job, but I did it well.
Very thankless job.
So this morning I was, I felt like I didn't really have to prep for this Dawn at Oaklawn, but getting ready this morning, and I thought, I'm going to write 5 things that people might not know about Vic, and I figured this is what we're gonna go.
Does Tina know all 5 of these? I hope. Good.
She does. Vic, well, this is more for the fans. Vic is a Broadway musical aficionado. How many of you would think that? I mean, and spend some buck on some Broadway tickets. I mean, we're talking Hamilton bucks.
Hamilton, yeah. The first time Tina and I saw Hamilton was 3 years ago, and we got tickets for the bargain basement price of $1,500 a piece, $3,000. And then when we got there, the guy that was Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda, they do 8 shows a week. We got there for the one show that he doesn't do.
Oh,
He was sitting behind us, 3 rows behind us, but we had better seats than Lin-Manuel.
Okay, I can go for that. What was the first Broadway show you ever saw?
Jesus Christ Superstar, which, by the way, is going to be on live.
John Legend.
Yeah, it's going to be on live next week, next Saturday, I think. That was the first one. If you can say the name of a Broadway show, I can tell you I've seen it. I've seen them all. There's some that I've seen. I've seen Wicked at least 30 times, at least, maybe more. People say, "Are you nuts? How can you go the same show 30 times?" Well, do you have your favorite?
That's what I was just getting ready to ask.
Well, do you have your favorite cassette that you like to listen to when you drive? Your favorite
Well,
CD?
maybe in the 80s or 90s I had a cassette.
Well,
now
yeah, well,
I just
you mean they don't
hook
have
my
cassettes
phone.
anymore? No,
I don't think there's a car that
My-
is still on the road that has a cassette.
I have 8-track.
No, you don't. In your Ford Pinto?
Exactly. In my Chevy Nova. I don't have very many expensive vices. People would
I
say,
think
"Well, you
Tina
gamble
would
on
beg to
horses.
disagree.
You gamble on horses, but it's not expensive if you win." So Broadway shows is my expensive vice. Christmas time, 2 years ago, Tina and I went, and we were there for a week from Christmas to New Year's and saw 11 shows in 6 days.
Okay, here's the $1 million question. Was your saint of a wife, Tina, a Broadway musical fan prior to being betrothed?
Not so much. She actually, one of her first jobs, Tina's from Hamburg, Germany, and by the way, just became this year an American citizen in October.
Yay, congrats.
Way to go, sweetheart. Way to
Congrats.
go. Well done. She worked at the biggest musical theater or biggest theater in Hamburg, Germany, and all the big shows would come in there, and she worked as an usher there. So she saw The Lion King 308 times. So sometimes musicals can drone on a little bit for her, but she likes them. You like musicals, right, sweetie? Yeah, see? That's like saying, you like that boat we just bought, honey? But, yeah. Well, our first date was at a musical. She blew me off for 6 weeks or so, and I finally talked her into going out with me, and we went and saw a great musical called Jersey Boys. And that was on February 20th, 2007, our first date. And 2 years to the exact day, February 20th, 2009, on the stage in Las Vegas, after a performance of Jersey Boys, with all 4 Jersey Boys on the stage, I took her backstage under the auspices of just getting a backstage tour because I had met a couple of the guys in the cast. You can meet cast members if you come to this same show 16 times in a row. They'll recognize you. So
some would call that stalking.
Yeah, it can be. So under the auspices of getting to meet the Jersey Boys and seeing backstage and all the things that go into it, I took Tina backstage, and we had set it up with a wonderful man by the name of Eric Bergen, who is in the movie Jersey Boys and also played a major role in the Broadway show for many years. We had it set up so that there was a very small but very bright spotlight on the stage, very much towards the front of the stage. And as we were walking around, we were showing, and Tina really loves the costumes and all of that, and the set direction and all of that. And one of the Jersey Boys said, "What the heck is that?" And Tina said, "Well, I'll go find out." And she went up, and inside a very, very small spotlight was the case with the engagement ring in it. So she saw that and tried to run out, but we had security stop her, and I got down on my knees, and all 4 Jersey Boys said, "Do it," and she said, "Okay," and she's regretted it every day since.
Peer pressure. Segueing to, speaking of peer pressure, Vic actually has ties to one of the most horrific places that you could ever imagine in your mind, and that is San Quentin Prison. Are you still doing some work there?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, what Nancy's talking about is San Quentin has a intramural sports program where the inmates play all sports, many sports. They have a huge yard where the inmates can go out and spend most of their day outside. Now, these are the ones that are privileged. The Menendez brothers are not.
We're not
out
talking
there.
death row.
Yeah, and Scott Peterson, who's there, he's not going out there. But a lot of the inmates do participate in sports activities, and one of the things that they do is that basketball teams will come in from the outside, and they'll come in and play games against the inmates. And one of the things that what I do is I get to officiate those games as the referee. And it's a fabulously gratifying experience. You can see some of what it's all about if you YouTube San Quentin basketball.
So are these low-level offenders?
Well, one of my partners and one of my fellow referees is in for life for attempted murder. Yeah.
So they like frisk them down. Nobody's got a shank or a shiv.
No,
Okay.
Once you get to that point, you're a pretty privileged person. So once a year, the Golden State Warriors actually come in and play against the inmates. Not the players from the team; they couldn't do that because it's a concrete court. But Bob Myers, for example, who is the general manager of the Golden State Warriors, he played for UCLA. And he's a fabulous player. This year, the inmates actually beat Golden State this year, 103-102. Phenomenal game. And I got to referee that. And Bob Myers had like 41 points and 39 rebounds. It was amazing. But they didn't win. And one thing that's very interesting is when you call fouls, you can't use a whistle. Because whistles on the yard at San Quentin are a very big deal.
You get on the ground, right?
You get on the ground. You
Yeah.
go straight to the ground. So we have duck calls. So
That was the duck call you
that's
were
the
going to
duck call, yeah. I actually have it. It might be, no, it's not in my bag. But so If you see a guy that gets a charging foul, quack.
See, you couldn't blow a duck call here.
Right.
Yeah.
I was thinking
it has a different meaning in Arkansas too. So
yeah, I was thinking about using the duck call on our handicap show, like blow the duck call before I try to give a long shot winner and saying the mutual clerks need to duck this race. But I haven't given many long shot winners, so a few.
Segueing to a different sport, Vic also is part owner of a baseball team. There's not much he doesn't do.
I actually sold my interest in that team this year.
Did they give you change for the dollar?
No, I didn't. I just basically signed something away. A couple of years ago, I was depressed because I wasn't doing anything. I had been a California steward, but I stopped doing that and started betting on horses and playing tournaments. And that's all very well and good, but you can't do it, It's especially tournaments. They're every other weekend, and I needed something to do. So I sent an email to 4 different teams in this little professional league around Marin County, where we live in San Francisco, and I got a call back from a team called the Pittsburgh Diamonds, and this is Pittsburgh, California. It's independent, non-affiliated baseball. But
what does that mean? Independent, non-affiliated.
It means that it's like a minor league, but you're not affiliated with a major league organization.
So are these guys have a 9 to 5 and they play on their time off?
Yes, many of them do. Yeah.
And are they paid players?
We paid. We had our salary cap for the team. For the entire season was $31,000. For the entire team for the entire season. Lots of guys made $200 a week.
Okay. So you're doing it because you love it.
They're doing it because they love it. Now, there's 2 kinds of players that play on the Pittsburgh Diamonds. One is players that are very young, very talented, but haven't been able to catch on with a major league team yet and are hoping to and get seen. The other one are guys that once upon a time were good enough. Some of them did play in the major leagues. For example, everybody remembers Jose Canseco.
The Juice, right?
He played on our team. We signed Jose, and he played.
Did he take the whole salary cap?
We paid him out of the marketing budget because he would have taken the whole salary cap.
Sneaky.
The first game he played, he hit a ball off the right center field wall and got thrown out at first base.
Did you demand a refund?
He ended up not playing as much with the players. Were fine with that. He could actually still hit. He couldn't run. Yeah, that's the thing. We would have him, and he'd do stuff like this.
He was a marketing ploy.
He was a marketing ploy.
There you go.
So anyway, they hired me to just do everything, and they said, "We'll pay you $50 a game. You'll be the PA announcer and do play-by-play and all of that." And I went out there on opening night, and then they said, "Great to have you. Let's go get him." And they said, "Except for we can't pay you the $50." And I said, "Okay, what time's first pitch?" And did the whole season for nothing. So at the end of the year, the guy that owned the team, he says, "We got to do something for you." I said, "Give me a ham sandwich. I don't care." And he said, "How about I make you 10% owner in the team?" I said, "Great. And I'll make you president of the team." Beautiful. I said, "How much do you think the team's worth?" And he said, $1,000. I said, "Good. I'll take my $100 and have a nice day." But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I actually worked so hard at that job that this year I wasn't feeling real well. This year because I had something that I was dealing with, and I had to deal with that. So I walked away from the Pittsburgh Diamonds, but I can go back whenever I want. So I might go back next year.
You're an alumnus.
I'm an emeritus.
Emeritus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I did get to do one thing that was really cool. I got to manage a game where you're actually the real manager. It's not a ceremonial thing. I was actually the manager of the team. I made the lineup. I coached third base.
Did you do the?
I had signs. Yeah. Actually, I'll tell you about how the signs work. Because they're very simple, and there's the baseball players know. We all know what BS means, okay? So BS, all right? We know what that means. And then H, which is BS happens, okay? As you're going through your signs, there's only basically 3 signs. B stands for bunt, S stands for steal, and H stands for hit and run. Those are the three things that you can do. You can also have a take sign, but in this day and age in baseball, you don't give a take sign. You just tell the guy, take, because the other team knows he's going to take anyway. So as you're going through your signs, it becomes very simple, and that is BSH, BSH. And you can do all the signs that you want, but if you at some point during that segment touch your cap, that means bunt. When you see all these signs of these guys on third base, all of them are dummy signs except for one somewhere in that sequence. So BS happens, bunt, steal, hit and run, and however you do it throughout the process, it doesn't matter. And I only gave a couple of signs in that game. We won 17-8. We were in front 11-2 after 2 innings. So, but I did give Jordan Yellen, our right fielder, I told him to bunt. And he did. He saw the sign. Yay! And that was a lot of fun. But I got to decide on pitching. I got to decide on who came in and the relievers when they came in. I actually was the manager of the team with my little uniform out there at third base. So that was a gas. That was
See,
fun.
the bad thing is when you went to BS, I went to a total non-baseball term in my head.
Well, that's what it was. I mean, that's what the
like bull.
Yeah, that's exactly
Okay,
right. I mean, it's
that's-
bull as happens.
Okay.
But that's how the players remember the signs, because baseball players are not exactly rocket scientists. So you have to keep it very basic, and it's bull as happens. Remember those three things. If you can remember 3 words, BSH, then you know the signs. And again, B for bunt, S for steal, and H for hit and run.
Vic has been given many accolades throughout his career. How many years have you been calling races? When was your first race call as an
My
announcer?
first race call was in Mexico.
What?
At Caliente, yeah. The guy that was the announcer there wanted to go to Del Mar. He got buried the day before and wanted to go back and try to get his money back. So I was there working as a chart caller for the racing for him. And that was 1983. And I called the Carter races at Caliente. First place I got paid to call the races was as the backup announcer at Garden State Park in 1985. That was the year that blasphemy happened, and that is Spendebuck won the Kentucky Derby and did not run in the Preakness. He ran in the Jersey Derby instead, because he was alive for a $2 million bonus for winning the Garden State Stakes, the Cherry Hill Mile, the Kentucky Derby, and the Jersey Derby. And that caused the people at Pimlico to go completely crazy.
Sure.
That was the origin of the $5 million Visa bonus, because they could not have it happen again, that the blasphemy of the Kentucky Derby winner didn't run in his next race in the Preakness.
Right.
And Spendebuck didn't. He did not run in the Preakness. He ran in the Jersey Derby and won the bonus. So after that, I got my first full-time job at a Detroit race course. That was 1985.
So during Vic's long and lengthy career, he has been honored several times. Horse racing's night of awards is what a lot of people would refer to as the Oscars. People are awarded with high accolades. It's the who's who of the evening that are given awards. And Vic has been honored twice with these awards. 2 Eclipse Awards he has been given throughout his career.
Yeah, that's like if you're an actor and you win an Oscar. I'd much rather win an Eclipse Award, even if I was an actor, because that is synonymous of being excellent in this sport that we love so much. Both of them were for radio pieces. One was about a guy named Jim Jordan, who some of you might remember was a jockey. He rode races here, actually, once upon a time. Did most of his riding in Nebraska and sort of on the fair circuit around Nebraska. And he rode and won races with a prosthetic leg. He got his leg shot off under somewhat suspicious circumstances. Got found in the wrong place by his wife, who shot his leg off. She missed. And he rode races after that. So I did a piece about him, and that won the first Eclipse that I won. And then the second one was when I did a piece about somebody Nancy and I so very much love to this day, and that's Lafitte Pincay Jr. I did a piece about him on the radio for his 55th birthday. So those were my 2 Eclipse Awards, and I'm very, very proud of them. If you ever want to see what an Eclipse Award looks like, come on by my office, because I got them both right here.
One of the things that occupies Vic's time and pocketbook are handicapping tournaments. And Vic missed a couple of days this meet because he participated in the National Handicapping Challenge in Las Vegas. And you just can't go to this tournament. You have to qualify for this tournament. And it is the coup de grace of handicapping challenges. And it is the best handicappers in the country that compete in this challenge. But you play on a regular basis, and there are buy-ins to these tournaments. And what are some of the things that you use from a handicapping standpoint? I mean, I know you use Thorograph, but what are some of the things that go through your daily grind to finally break it down on a top selection?
Well, the biggest thing would be film work. Watching replays of the horses that are running on a particular card, and that is painstaking and tedious. When I was preparing for the NHC this year, I watched 2 races on every horse that could potentially run over the 2 days of that tournament, and we're talking about 10 race cards at 8 different racetracks. So I basically started Monday watching film and watched about 12 to 13 hours worth of film every day all the way up until the tournament started on Friday afternoon. That's a very unusual situation because the NHC covers racetracks all over the country. Most tournaments are a little bit more myopic in their focus in that, for example, the Breeders' Cup tournament. That's one that's near and dear to me because I've come very close to winning it the last 2 years. As a matter of fact, the last 2 years in the Breeders' Cup, when you win other tournaments, one of the perks that you can get from winning a tournament, and I won one at Del Mar 2 years ago, and then I won one at Santa Anita last year, that make you alive. If you win that tournament and the Breeders' Cup tournament, you get $1 million bonus. And both years, at the head of the stretch, the horse that I had he won, I would have won the $1 million. 2 years ago, it was California Chrome. When Arrogate ran by him, I had $50,000 to win on California Chrome. I bet my entire bankroll on him. Ended up with a little bit of a saver trifecta and went from 2nd to 14th in that race in the tournament. In retrospect, I probably shouldn't have done that. I probably should have been a little bit more conservative because I was thinking about winning the $1 million, but Tina reminded me, second place in this thing is $250,000. And she reminded me after the race, but she did remind me. And then this year, just this past year, the one thing that I knew about the Breeders' Cup this year was that I loved Collected. And it was really a good thing for me because he was going to run in the Classic, and I knew that I was going to try to focus all of my attention on trying to get alive to a Collected with as much money as I could. So during the course of the 2 days, you start with a $7,500 bankroll, and I hit some bets as we were going along. And so from Friday and up until the Classic on Saturday, I changed that $7,500 bankroll to $30,000. I ran it up to $30,000. So going into that race in the tournament, I was in about 15th place. And I knew for sure that and so I bet the entire $30,000 on the race. I had a $4,000 exacta box gun runner and Collected, and I had $22,000 to win on Collected. If he wins, I'm going to win the bonus. He didn't win. He ran second, but I did have the exacta for $4,000, which moved me up into 10th place in the tournament. I actually got DQ'd, disqualified up into 9th place because a guy got disqualified. So both years in the Breeders' Cup tournament, 2 years in a row, at the head of the stretch, I was in front to win $1 million.
Wow.
And both times I finished second. But it's good to be in that position.
I guess so.
Yeah. So, and it ended up, my bankroll at the end of the races this year was $56,000, and I got $30,000 for finishing 9th and some other stuff. So it worked out nicely.
So this is the first year that Vic and I are doing a pre-race show on Fridays and Saturdays. And we are handicapping all races on the card and giving our top 4 in that race a best bet, a most likely winner, and a $20 show parlay. And I like your explanation of there is a difference, a big difference actually, between a best bet and a most likely winner. So explain the two.
Yeah, when I walk into the track, and this happens to you too, who's your best bet of the day? And I say, well, do you really want my best bet of the day, or do you want me to tell you which horse I think is most likely to win? Because they are two entirely different things. And that was proven yesterday by my cohort on this show when her best bet of the day was Alina's Dream, who won and paid $14.60 in the seventh race. That was a great pick.
It was your pick too.
I know, it was a great pick.
Yeah.
I heard I hit the superfecta cold in that race. Somebody at the bank.
I think so.
Yeah. I never know about that because I don't know much about superfectas. I am a conscientious shopper. I bet win and show. I bet show here at Oaklawn because it's the best bet on the card by far, because it's the cheapest bet. It costs 10 cents out of every dollar to bet to show. You want to bet to win, it costs 15 cents. If you want to bet a superfecta, it costs 23 cents. Think about that. It adds up. So people will say, who's your best bet? And I'll say, well, do you really want to know who my best bet is? You're most likely, the horse that I think that you have the best chance of generating funds from, or a horse that I think is just likely to win. But today is a perfect example. If you ask me who my best bet is, I'm not telling until 11:40. But if you ask me who the most likely winner is, it's Ma'am. There's a horse today called Ma'am. She's 2-5, and she won't get beat. She'll win. So big difference between the best bet and the most likely winner.
And it's interesting, as Vic gave this out yesterday, it's actually in race 3. It's a filly and mare allowance, optional claiming 40, going 1 mile and a 16th. Brad Cox trained Fernando de la Cruz up. This is one of the biggest win percentage trainer jockey combinations. She's the number 5 in a field of 7 and 8-5 on the morning line, Ma'am, and looks for the 3rd straight win, and coming out of a 6 3/4 length win over the slop at the distance against first level allowance runners. And she just jumps off the page. So
if she's 8-5, I will personally see to it that she's not.
So when I print out past performances, I print them out the day that they come out. So it doesn't have odds, but I typically do wind up picking, it's easy to do, I guess, first or second choice, whoever the odds maker. And we actually have a couple different people that do the morning line here, some better than others. But, well, it's true.
It's a hard job.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, now you're going to hear the worst sound in America here in just a few moments. And you will see our outrider right down there. Hopefully make an attempt. Well, he's not going to get it now. So on a clear day, I live about 1.5 miles due west from here, and I can hear that loose horse siren. And you can see the horse is going back to his barn. There's no place like home, so that horse is going directly back to his home. One reason that loose horse siren is so loud is to not only inform the riders on the track that there is a loose horse, but to also alert the people back in the barn area that there is a loose horse on the track, to kind of give them a heads up.
I hate that sound.
It's an awful
never
sound,
a good
isn't
thing.
it?
But
it's awful.
She didn't really look like she had her heart in it.
Not today.
Yeah, that's a Gennaro Garcia horse, and
Not feeling it.
That one's gonna. Sometimes when you see a horse loose, you know it's not going to end well. Some, you can tell she's just going home. She'll be fine.
Not
Wants to
feeling
have
it
breakfast.
Today. Does anybody have any questions for Vic before we let him go? 35.
Oh, you're talking about today? Oh, yeah. Her name is Ma'am.
Third
number
race,
5 in
horse.
race 3.
Alina's Image.
Oh, she should have won. Yeah. Yeah, he's talking about a race yesterday. Alina's Image. Nancy and I both picked that horse, and as I said, it was Nancy's best bet, and it was a great selection. We were lucky because a horse in that race, Desert Thief, got completely eliminated by another horse, Arnana Lee, who came in and wiped out basically half the field. Just eliminated half the field. Desert Thief was one of the ones that took the worst of it, and it must have cost her 6 or 8, maybe even 10 lengths, and she only got beat by 2. So, but there are other times where you can be unlucky. I made a very big bet in the pick 4 yesterday on a horse called Clearly Super, a Kenny McPeak horse, because there was a favorite in that race, an Asmussen horse called Sarab, who I hated. I knew he had no chance. And Clearly Super got beat a length and almost fell on his butt at the 5.5. He clipped heels with that Asmussen horse. Scared me because when I was calling it, I saw out of the corner of my eye. And yes, you do watch the horse that you bet out of the corner of your eye. I do. He clipped heels, and I thought Alex Conchari was coming off, and I thought that horse was going down. Wasn't exactly as who's the horse that clipped heels in the Preakness? Was that Smarty Jones? Yeah,
Smarty Jones.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly as dramatic as Smarty Jones, but clearly Super looked like he was going to fall, and somehow got back on his feet and ended up finishing second. Got beat a length. So the racing gods give and take. We were lucky to win with Alina's Image, but we were unlucky. I was really unlucky with Clearly Super, who was half an hour the best. It happens. You go on to the next one.
What has been your biggest headache in horse racing? Owner, jockey agent, steward, announcer.
That is the easy. I could come on here for the next 20 years. You could ask me 20,000 questions each time. That's the easiest question you will ever answer. Jockey agent. That is a thankless job. Basically, your job is to have trainers verbally abuse you. That's the first thing you do. And if you don't have the right jockey, then the next person that's going to yell at you in the morning will be him. Jockey agents make a lot of money. And I've been very fortunate to have some guys that really did very well. Joel Rosario, Martin Garcia, and Tyler Bays. I actually won a Breeders' Cup race with Joel Rosario when he won the $2 million Breeders' Cup Sprint. And that'll be my last story. I'll tell you about when Tina and I were engaged and when we won that race together. But being a jockey's agent, they make a lot of money, but believe me, they earn it. It's a very, very difficult job, a tremendous amount of pressure. Not only are you trying to get your jock on the best possible horses, but you're also trying to keep him healthy by not putting him on the wrong horses, right, which is a very, very important part. It's not so much trying to find the right ones, it's making sure that you don't ride the wrong ones. So steward is tough because Nancy and I have both been stewards. Nancy helped me a great deal in preparing for my steward's exam, and she was already a California steward. And one of the tough parts about that job is you find out who your friends really are. You think you have friends, and then when you have to make a ruling that goes against them, you find out that they really weren't as good of friends as that you hoped they were. Yes, sir. A steward is like basically an umpire for the races, or a judge too. The stewards sit up on the roof, just a little ways down from me, on the top floor, and they have two jobs. One is during the races, they make sure that the races are run fairly and cleanly and safely. So sometimes you'll see a steward's inquiry when you see that flashing on the board, or a jockey's objection. The stewards are going to look at the videotape and see if another horse was fouled by a certain horse. That's their job in the afternoon. But that's only a small part of the job, because they also serve basically as a panel of judges. And that is, during the morning, they will have hearings for licensees who may or may not have had rules violations. Everything from soup to nuts, the stewards take care of as far as administrating the rule book for here in Arkansas, or in Nancy and I's case in California.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Did you realize you had the talent to call races? How do you remember the name?
When did I realize I had the talent to call races? I'm still hoping that I might.
That's a unique talent.
And it's interesting, let me interject here, because every track announcer has their own path to figuring out prior to a race call. Some use crayons, some use markers, some break down the program page a little bit differently. So it's each announcer's way of memorization, and it's really, really interesting, because I've worked with quite a few to see how everyone is individualistic.
That's true. To answer your question about talent to call races, I don't think that you're born a race caller or anything like that. You could do it. Any of you could become a race caller. I could teach you to become a race caller. It's an acquired skill. It's not like Barbra Streisand was born to be able to sing. But race callers, you can become a race caller. I've taught a lot of people to be a race caller. I just saw Matt Cox walk in. He doesn't know it, but I'm going to talk to him today about becoming a race caller because we need a backup here. Yes, sir. Terry Wallace is. Terry was at the function last night. Looks great. Yeah, I told him I need a couple days off. Why didn't he call the races for me? And he said, forget it. I called every race for 37 years. I'm finished. But great man, a big influence on me as I was coming up for my career. To answer your question about the memorization of horses, I do it old school in that I don't really mark my program or have pens and bells and whistles and all of that. I just look at the horses, the silks that the horses are wearing. It would be very nice if most silks were like my shirt today because they're a lot easier to see when they're running down the backside. But and I memorized the horses' names to those silks. Believe it or not, once you've seen a horse a couple of times at a particular meet, you remember them from the time before. So it makes it a lot easier. If you have a field of Arkansas-bred maidens and 8 first-time starters, well, that's one thing, and it takes the entire time to be able to memorize the horses and learn those new names. But if you have a field of 6250 claimers that you've seen once every 3 weeks, I can memorize a 12-horse field of them in 2 minutes and know who they are. So it's an acquired skill, and it just takes a lot of practice. I called 1,000 races practicing before I ever called a live race. And I've called now, we figured it out the other day, somewhere between 45 and 46,000 races. So I'll tell you my Breeders' Cup story and then let you go. I was Joel Rosario's agent coming to the 2009 Breeders' Cup. And he had several mounts in the Breeders' Cup that year, but the one that I was really looking forward to and the horse that I thought gave us our best chance to win a Breeders' Cup race was a horse called Dancing in Silks, a horse trained by someone Nancy knows very well, Carly Gaines. Just a wonderful, wonderful lady. And sure enough, Dancing in Silks jumped up and paid $54 and won the 2009 Breeders' Cup Sprint, a $2 million race. So it's $2 million for the purse. That means $1.2 million to the winning owner. That means 10% of that to the jockey, which is $120,000. That means 25% of that 10% for the agent, which was $30,000. So we got very fortunate there. That week, we had won some other races, an allowance race, little undercard stake and all of that. And my check, and I'm not saying this story to try to brag. I got lucky. But my check that week for the Breeders' Cup and all those races was $38,000. And I was engaged to Tina at the time. And I found out what it was going to be like to be married. When I came home and I said, sweetheart, we got our Breeders' Cup check. She said, great. How much is it? I said, $38,000. She said, wow, that's fabulous. How much of it do you want?
See, here's the interesting thing. I have a bird's eye view of Tina, and she is shaking her head.
You know you said that. I haven't seen that money since. Yeah, because she knew I'm the only person that could spend $38,000 in 2 weeks on Broadway shows.
That's just sad.
That is sad. By the way, there's a good show right now at the Arkansas Rep in Little Rock, Mamma Mia. Fun show. If you like the songs of ABBA, they've put it together, and they're doing a great job with it. And that is a fabulous little facility, brand new. They run for another week over there. We've already seen it twice. I'm not going to be able to talk Tina into going a third time, but right now, Mamma Mia is playing. And over in Memphis, one of the great musicals that's ever been produced, Wicked, is over there. And then after that, a musical is coming in called Something Rotten, which is so much fun. You got to go see it. That's it.
Are you sure?
No.
You now have the second longest Dawn at Oaklawn again on
Yeah, and I was the
YouTube.
first longest, too.
You were the first longest.
It takes me an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes. No.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause for track announcer Vic Stauffer. Thank you, Vic.